It is much safer to be feared than loved. Niccolò Machiavelli. Respect is not given. It is not a courtesy. It is not a birthright. It is taken, seized, by those who understand the fundamental laws of power. You can demand recognition. You can beg for approval. You can shout into the void, hoping the world will acknowledge you. But the truth is brutal. The world does not care until you make it care. And those who are respected, truly respected, have one thing in common. They have mastered the Machiavellian art of control, of strategy, of presence. You see, respect is not a feeling, it is a currency. And like any currency, it can be earned, spent, devalued, or stolen. The weak waste it on seeking validation. The powerful hoard it by mastering their image, their influence, their ruthlessness when necessary. If you want your name to carry weight, to command a room without a single word, then you must understand the game you are playing. Because make no mistake, this is a game. And most are losing without even knowing it. Niccolò Machiavelli understood one thing above all else. Perception is reality. It is not enough to be strong. You must appear strong. It is not enough to be wise. You must project wisdom. It is not enough to be worthy of respect. You must force others to see you as undeniable. You think good intentions matter? That being a good person will earn you respect? Then you have already lost. The world does not respect kindness. It respects power wrapped in the illusion of kindness. It respects those who are feared more than they are loved. But here's where most people break. They want the reward without the price. They crave admiration but shun the discomfort of maintaining it. They start strong, setting standards, drawing lines in the sand. But then comes the test. The small concessions. The moments where silence is easier than confrontation. The just this once that turns into just always. And before they realize it, they have lost control. Not in an explosion, not in a spectacle, but in a slow, subtle erosion of authority. And the world, sensing the weakness, adjusts accordingly. Respect is not lost in grand betrayals. It is lost in 1,000 minor surrenders. In the joke you laughed at even though it insulted you. In the favor you did even though you despised them. In the company you kept even though they disrespected you. It dies when you allow comfort to override principle. When you mistake tolerance for diplomacy. When you justify what you would have condemned. Because here's a hard truth most will never admit. The masses do not respect the agreeable. They do not admire the self-sacrificing. They do not revere the endlessly patient. They see them as tools, as background noise, as convenient. The moment you become predictable, always available, always explaining, always bending, you become irrelevant. You become another nameless pawn in a world that only remembers the kings. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that to maintain power, one must be willing to be ruthless when required. That to be respected, one must be feared enough to never be tested. Not cruel, not reckless, but firm, strategic, willing to do what others are too weak to do. Because in the end, the only ones who dictate their own worth are those who refuse to let others define it. And now comes the question you must ask yourself. How many times have you given away your own authority just to make others comfortable? And that is where most people fail. Not in strength, not in intelligence, but in discipline. They are unable to bear the weight of consistency. They flinch at discomfort. They crave the illusion of being respected while indulging in behaviors that guarantee they never will be. And so they fall, not in a single moment of weakness, but in a series of quiet compromises, each one making the next easier. Machiavelli was clear. Men must be either crushed or controlled. There is no in-between. To allow disrespect to go unchecked, even once, is to invite it forever. Do you think the powerful waste time explaining themselves? Do you think they second-guess their own worth? Do you think they soften their words, adjust their stance, betray their own principles for the comfort of others? Number. They understand that power is not in what you say, but in what you refuse to tolerate. Look at history. Look at the figures who carved their names into stone, while others faded into dust. They did not beg for respect. They imposed it. They made themselves necessary, irreplaceable, and most importantly, feared, not in a way that bred hatred, but in a way that commanded reverence. They understood that the moment you become too accessible, too eager to please, too concerned with being liked, you become just another option, and options are discarded when they are no longer useful. How many times have you over-explained a decision? How many times have you softened a boundary just to keep the peace? How many times have you sacrificed your own authority to avoid being misunderstood? And what did it get you? More respect, more admiration, or just more people who felt entitled to your compliance? There is a reason why those who are selective with their words, their time, their presence hold a different kind of weight. When they speak, people listen. When they enter a room, the atmosphere shifts, not because they are loud, not because they demand attention, but because they command it without effort. And that, above all, is what separates those who are respected from those who are merely tolerated. Now ask yourself, when you walk into a room, do you bring weight, or do you fade into the background? And that's where the difference is made. Not in words, not in grand gestures, but in presence. The presence of someone who does not seek approval, who does not barter their dignity for acceptance, who stands firm even when it would be easier to yield. Because here's the truth. Respect is not won in arguments, not granted in sympathy, not gifted by others. It is seized. It is taken through unwavering self-command, through decisions that do not bend under pressure, through a consistency that makes your very existence an unshakable force. Machiavelli knew that power is not about being loved, it is about being needed. And to be needed, you must be untouchable, indispensable, and above all, self-sufficient. You must be someone who does not beg for inclusion, but whose absence is felt when they are gone. And that kind of presence, that level of influence, comes not from charisma alone, but from the way you move, the way you act, the way you establish yourself as someone who is not easily accessed, not easily swayed, not easily replaced. Look at those who command respect effortlessly. They do not overextend. They do not chase. They do not dilute themselves to be palatable to the weak. They have understood something most never will. If you make yourself too available, if you make yourself too eager, if you hand yourself over too freely, you lower your own price. And the world only values what is rare. But what do most people do? They explain, they justify, they plead to be seen, to be heard, to be validated. And in doing so, they signal exactly what they fear the most, that their value is not self-evident, that they are not sure of their own worth, that they need others to confirm it for them. And once you give that power away, you will spend your life trying to get it back. The powerful do not beg. They do not announce their worth. They act in ways that make others recognize it without a word. Their time is structured, their movements deliberate, their words chosen with precision. They do not explain every decision. They do not apologize for enforcing their standards. They understand that to be respected, they must be consistent, unshaken, unmoved by the fleeting emotions of the moment. And that's where the battle is won, not in domination, not in force, but in unwavering self-respect, in the silent but absolute refusal to negotiate on what matters. Because the moment you make excuses, the moment you tolerate what should never be tolerated, the moment you compromise out of fear of being disliked, you teach the world exactly how to treat you. Machiavelli would tell you this: men respect not those who seek fairness, but those who dictate the terms. The world is not looking for someone to be nice. It is looking for someone to follow. And those who hold their ground, who do not bend under pressure, who do not seek approval but command it by their very nature, those are the ones the world cannot ignore. And that is where you must ask yourself, how many times have you forfeited your own respect just to keep the peace? How many times have you allowed the world to dictate your worth because you were afraid to set the terms yourself? How many times have you betrayed your own authority just to be liked? And now, the most important question of all, when will you stop? Because the truth is, respect is not given, it is taken. It is built brick by brick with every action, every choice, every refusal to lower yourself for convenience. And yet, most people will never grasp this. They believe respect comes from kindness, from compliance, from being agreeable. But in reality, respect is born from necessity, from power, from the ability to act, but the discipline to withhold. Machiavelli understood this well. He knew that men, by nature, are more likely to obey those they fear losing than those they simply like. And what is fear in this context? Not terror, not aggression, but the undeniable understanding that you will not bend, that your presence is a privilege, not an entitlement. The world respects what it cannot manipulate, and it discards what is too easily swayed. Look around you. Who are the people whose presence shifts the air in a room? The ones who are not always available, the ones who do not explain themselves endlessly, the ones who do not allow themselves to be pulled in every direction by the demands of others. They are rare because they understand something most do not. Perceived value is everything. And yet, most people dilute themselves to be liked. They make themselves too accessible, too eager to please, too willing to soften their edges for the comfort of others. They do not realize that by trying to make everyone happy, they make themselves indistinguishable. And when you blend in, you become forgettable. But here's the hard truth. If you are respected, you will never need to chase approval. The world will recognize your worth without you having to announce it. This is why over-explanation is the silent killer of authority. When you feel the need to justify every action, every boundary, every refusal, you are signaling that your decisions are open to negotiation. And that is a mistake. Machiavelli would tell you, speak less, move with intent, and let your actions create your reputation. The prince does not beg to be seen as powerful. He simply is. He does not ask permission to take his place. He asserts it. And this does not mean arrogance or cruelty. It means absolute certainty in who you are, what you will tolerate, and what you will never compromise. Because when you are clear on your value, something shifts. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop seeking validation from those who never deserved your energy in the first place. And in doing so, you force the world to make a choice, either rise to meet your standards or remove themselves from your presence. And this is where many fall. They are afraid of loss, afraid of disappointing, afraid of standing alone. But what they fail to understand is this: losing the wrong people is not a loss. It is a victory. Because every time you keep someone in your life who does not respect you, you are teaching yourself that your own self-worth is negotiable. Machiavelli knew that power is not about forcing obedience. It is about being so firm in who you are that obedience becomes the natural response. The world respects strength. It respects decisiveness. It respects those who are willing to let go of anything that does not serve them. And the moment you embrace this fully, you become untouchable. So ask yourself, how much of your life has been spent trying to convince others to respect you rather than demanding it through your actions? How many times have you bent, wavered, softened your own voice just to maintain peace? And now, the only question that matters, how much longer will you allow that to continue? Because the truth is, peace without respect is an illusion. It is the calm before erosion, the quiet before insignificance. You may think that by avoiding conflict, you are maintaining harmony, but what you are really doing is training the world to disregard you. Machiavelli understood this. He knew that power does not belong to the loudest, but to the most strategic, and the greatest strategy of all, knowing when to act and when to withhold. The fool believes that every battle must be fought. The wise man chooses his wars carefully. He does not react to every insult, does not waste his energy proving himself to those who are beneath his notice. Instead, he cultivates something far more dangerous: mystique. Mystique is the art of being unpredictable, of being present but never common, of being known but never fully understood. It is the weapon of those who command respect without begging for it. When people cannot fully grasp you, they cannot control you. And when they cannot control you, they have no choice but to respect you. But this is where most fail. They overexpose themselves. They offer too much information. They seek validation through excessive explanation, as if their value must be constantly justified. They become too predictable, too available, too willing to be everything for everyone, and in doing so, they become nothing to themselves. Understand this. Respect is not built on explanation, but on presence. It is not won through words, but through scarcity. The more you are everywhere, the less you are valued. The more you respond to every demand, the less you are respected. The more you allow yourself to be an open book, the easier you are to dismiss. Machiavelli would tell you, be strategic with your presence. Make people wonder where you stand. Make them question whether they have your attention, your time, your energy. Because once they know you are always available, you are no longer special. You are no longer an asset. You are just another face in the crowd. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If you want to be respected, you must become difficult to reach. You must not react to every slight, must not entertain every distraction, must not engage in every meaningless debate. Your energy is a currency. Spend it wisely. This is why the powerful do not explain. They do not justify. They do not beg for understanding. They set their boundaries in stone and allow the world to adjust accordingly. If you do not like their standards, you are free to leave, but you will never see them lower themselves just to be accepted. And this is where most will fail. They will shrink themselves for approval. They will soften their words to avoid offending. They will explain and justify and overexpose, hoping to be understood. And in the process, they will lose the one thing they cannot afford to lose: mystery. Machiavelli understood that the moment people believe they have you figured out, you become predictable. And what is predictable is easily dismissed. True power lies in maintaining an element of the unknown, in making sure that no one can fully anticipate your next move, in carrying yourself in such a way that even in silence, your presence commands attention. So ask yourself, when was the last time you held back instead of explaining? When was the last time you let silence do the work instead of words? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be missed instead of constantly showing up? Because respect is not built in moments of explanation. It is built in the quiet, in the distance, in the deliberate choice to not be everywhere at once. And those who master this, they do not demand respect, they become it. And now we arrive at the most dangerous illusion of all, the belief that kindness alone will earn you respect. It is a lie, one that has been sold to the weak to keep them compliant, to keep them docile, to keep them believing that fairness is enough to secure their place in the world. Machiavelli knew better. He knew that respect is not granted to those who are simply kind, nor to those who are merely just. It is granted to those who command it, those who inspire fear when necessary, those who are capable of being ruthless when the situation demands it. And yet, how many have been conditioned to think that if they are simply good, if they are patient, if they are accommodating, the world will reward them? Look around. Is that what you see? Do you see the most generous at the top? Do you see the most forgiving commanding power? No. You see those who understand balance, those who know that a man who is only kind will be devoured, and a man who is only feared will be overthrown. The secret is in mastering both, mercy and ruthlessness, approachability and distance, generosity and restraint. Because here is what no one tells you. If you are too kind, you will be mistaken for weak, and the world preys on weakness. If you are too generous, you will be taken for granted, and the world exploits generosity. If you are too forgiving, you will invite disrespect, and the world disrespects those who do not enforce consequences. And yet, people wonder why they are treated poorly, why their kindness is met with indifference, why their good nature is rewarded with betrayal. The answer is simple, because kindness without strength is not respected. It is used, and once you are used up, you are discarded. This is why Machiavelli warned against the naive belief in human goodness. Not because goodness is unimportant, but because it must be backed by force. A kind man without strength is nothing more than a sacrificial lamb. A kind man who is capable of destruction, but chooses when to wield it, is unstoppable. So the question is, what do you do when your kindness is mistaken for weakness? When your patience is mistaken for passivity? When your generosity is mistaken for a bottomless well? You enforce limits. You impose consequences. You let silence speak louder than your explanations. Because the world does not listen to words, it listens to actions. You do not need to announce that you demand respect. You need only withdraw from those who refuse to give it. You do not need to explain why you deserve better. You need only walk away when you are given less. And this is where most fail. They believe that explaining their worth will convince others to see it. They believe that justifying their standards will make others respect them. But the truth is, people do not respect those who negotiate their own value. And yet, every day, people diminish themselves in the name of diplomacy. They lower their voices so as not to upset. They tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. They excuse bad behavior under the guise of patience. And what do they receive in return? Less respect, not more. Because what Machiavelli understood is that people respect those who can walk away without looking back. They respect those who can say no without hesitation. They respect those who, despite their kindness, are not afraid to enforce their boundaries with an iron will. And this is the truth. Power is not in how much you can give, but in how much you can deny. Respect is not in how much you are liked, but in how much you are valued. And if you do not control your own value, the world will lower it for you. So stop explaining. Stop justifying. Stop negotiating with those who do not see your worth. Because at the end of the day, respect is not given to those who wait for it. It is taken by those who refuse to be ignored. And now we come to the final test. The moment where everything you have heard, everything you have understood, is put to use. Because this is not about theory. This is not about intellectual entertainment. This is about whether or not you are truly ready to step into a different league of existence. Respect is not something you earn once and keep forever. It is something you reinforce every single day. It is in the way you speak, in the way you carry yourself, in the things you tolerate, and more importantly, in the things you refuse to tolerate. It is in the strength of your silence, in the sharpness of your gaze, in the certainty of your decisions. The world watches. Even when you think no one is paying attention, they are. They take note of how easily you fold. They test how quickly you give in. They learn how far they can push you. And if they see that you are willing to sacrifice your standards just to be accepted, just to avoid discomfort, just to keep the peace, then you have already lost. Because in the game of power, there are two types of people: those who demand respect and those who chase approval. One dictates the terms. The other waits to be chosen. One moves with calculated precision. The other scrambles for recognition. One remains an enigma, unpredictable, untouchable. The other is an open book, easy to manipulate, easy to discard. So ask yourself, where do you stand? Do you command respect without saying a word, or do you exhaust yourself explaining why you deserve it? Do you move with the quiet authority of someone who knows their value, or do you give away your power by seeking validation from those who do not matter? If you do not control the way the world perceives you, the world will define it for you. If you do not dictate the terms of how you are treated, others will assume they have the right to decide for you, and they will decide in their favor, not yours. The harsh reality is this: you are either respected or you are not. There is no middle ground. There is no in-between. If you must constantly remind people to respect you, then you have already lost the battle. Because real respect is not requested, it is imposed by presence alone. And what is presence? It is the weight of your existence. It is the silent command that follows you into every room. It is the knowledge that you do not seek approval, because you are already enough. It is the understanding that your value is non-negotiable, that your time is sacred, that your attention is a privilege, not an entitlement. Machiavelli understood this. He understood that those who wish to be both respected and safe must be willing to play a different game, a game where kindness is measured, where generosity is strategic, where every action is deliberate. He understood that those who seek to be loved more than they seek to be respected will always end up betrayed, used, discarded. And so the final question remains: what kind of person will you be? Will you continue to negotiate your worth? Will you continue to explain your limits? Will you continue to chase after those who do not see your value? Or will you finally step into the role you were meant to occupy? Because the truth is, you do not need more time. You do not need more convincing. You do not need more signs. You already know what you have to do. You already know what must change. The only thing left is for you to decide whether you are strong enough to do it. And if you are, then from this moment forward, your name will carry weight. Your presence will command attention, and respect will no longer be something you ask for. It will be something that follows you, because power is not what you demand. It is in what you become. Now go, and make yourself impossible to ignore. Like and subscribe for more transformational teachings. And if you would like to support the channel more, check link in description. Cheers.